Hey there, and welcome to Ministry Matters, a podcast where we talk about campus ministry here at Hannibal LaGrange University. Today, we will be talking to Pastor Joe Thrower. Pastor Joe is the head pastor at Prince Avenue Baptist Church here in Hannibal, Missouri. Well, Pastor Joe, thank you for being here on the podcast today. We're really excited to have you on here today.
It's my pleasure. When I was a student at HLG, podcasts were not a thing, so this is
Look how far we've come.
fun. So fun.
Look how far we've come, man. Now we're here and we get to do a podcast with you, and you're part of the Hannibal community and everything. But now we're gonna get into that. But the first question that we have for you today is, can you tell us a little bit about where you're from and your upbringing?
Sure. So I grew up in a little farming community called Ewing, Missouri. It's about 35 miles north of Hannibal. We had 470 people in our town, but our schools were kind of interesting because in Lewis County, all of the cities in Lewis County except one go to one school. So even though we didn't have very many people in our town, we still had a relatively good-sized school. So, as a result of that, as a kid, I always joke we were kind of fake farmers. We had 40 acres and a cow or two, and but we enjoyed that. My parents are believers. They spent a lot of their time raising us in the church. My mom was the church secretary as a little kid, and I remember folding bulletins every week to try to make that work. And so I just remember church was another place that we existed all the time. It was a good pace of life, simple people that love the Lord and have depth.
Yeah.
So a little bit where I'm from. Despite my best efforts, I tried to go to college far away from Ewing, and I ended up eventually being 30 whole miles from Ewing. But definitely enjoyed my childhood in that capacity.
Yeah, absolutely. And you had that, obviously a Christian upbringing and whatnot, so that means that you've had faith from the very beginning. I mean, you grew up in that area, grew up in church. So can you tell us a little bit what faith means to you?
Sure. So, the biblical definition is that faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the assurance of things not seen. Misquoted that, but you get the picture, right? It's not just a wish, it's a confidence that the Lord is going to do what he says he's going to do. And so I think faith in and of itself has to have that component. Like, I can't make this happen, but God is able and does. And so, generalized, faith undergirds everything that we do. Like, that's the whole beauty of what Christ did, is he's not saying you have to earn it in any capacity. He's saying, like, I've earned it, and you have to trust that. And that's a faith piece. So, it's that quiet confidence that I know what's going on, I know what's happening, and I know what needs to take place.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's my off the cuff.
There you go. I love it, man. I mean, I think that's a great definition of what faith is and how it can tie into your life specifically. Yep. But to kind of connect here back to Hannibal,
sure.
You said you're from Ewing, Missouri, which is just 30 minutes away from Hannibal. You ended up coming to HLGU, and you graduated from here and whatnot.
HLGC.
HLG. Okay, my fault. Yeah,
I forgot. Not a university.
Right. Just a college back then. Now we're a university, big time in here.
That's right.
So you've been connected in this community for a long time, and so I guess that kind of answers the question. But how did you end up at Prince Avenue specifically?
So that story actually is tied to my college days. So I came to Hannibal LaGrange in 2006. That was kind of a convoluted thing. Without getting into a huge amount of details, when I was 16, I felt the Lord's calling on my life. And God knows he can't trust me with how much of that to show. And so his calling on my life was anytime, anywhere, what's your answer? Yep. And so at 16, my answer was, whatever you want, I'll do. So I actually went to a different college. I was going to be a physical therapist. In my head, I could make a bunch of money and be like a part-time youth guy or something and check all the boxes.
Right.
But then God kind of prevented me from sleep when I was at that college. Not because I didn't like it. I loved it. It was a very different environment. It was a secular environment, and you were either going to be a believer or you were going to get eaten alive. Like, there was no in between. Like, it was either real or it wasn't, and I kind of was really excited about that.
Yeah.
But what it boiled down to is the Lord just saying, like, you told me anytime, anywhere, I'm calling that in. And for me, it was, I realized just through a lot of prayer and reading the Word and talking to mentors that my whole trajectory of life was, I want to make money and, check some Christian boxes in the process, and that was it. And so, long story short, I dropped out of college on a Friday. No, just kidding, on a Monday morning, because I couldn't even drop out because I didn't get to the office in time on Friday. So I dropped out of college on Monday morning and then started class here at HLG on Tuesday. And that whole process was, for me, I wanted to study something regardless of what it paid me at the end of the day. I wanted something that mattered to me, something that I was passionate about. And for me, like even as a teenager, even though I was not, I guess my aim was a little off, I still loved the Lord and I wanted to know what his word said. And so I came to HLG to study the Bible, not really caring how it would pay me. And also because HLG let me play baseball, which was a big deal for me because at my university before, I was playing baseball there. So anyway, that's kind of how I got to HLG. But what happened was I had guys in the dorm that were like, hey, come to church with me. Some guys who were sophomores or juniors or whatever. And they went to Prince Avenue. Mm-hmm. And so as a freshman in college, I went to a few of the different churches. And what I found at Prince Avenue was like a group of people that were authentic. Mm-hmm. Like they didn't attempt to be good or like make something big and pretty. Their whole goal was, we are going to love Jesus and each other really well, and everything we do is going to be to the best of our ability, even if our ability isn't the best. Yep. And so in that environment, with the pastor that was there, who later became a mentor of mine, ironically, mentor of mine, at one point my boss, and then my parents' pastor. And then I became the pastor of that. Like, it's just this weird
circle there.
Yeah. But anyway, so we just, like, people at Prince came alongside me and said, I care about you, and I want to show you what it means to serve the Lord, not necessarily as a pastor, but just as a man. Yeah. And they gave me opportunities to serve. I was teaching a Sunday school class. And I mean, it was funny. It wasn't even like big, extravagant things. It was like, hey, man, we have all these college students. You're a Bible major. Teach Sunday school. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll do that. And that seems silly, but it was such an important kind of growth moment for me. Mm-hmm. And so that's how I got to Prince as just a parishioner. Yeah. And then a lot of things happened. The church went through some turmoil, but also I got married and the pastor left, and it just was this big, weird thing. And so my wife and I got married. We went to a different church, and long story short, fast forward about 5 years after that, I get a call from the former pastor of that church, who was a friend of mine, who said, hey, Prince Avenue's pastor resigned 2 weeks ago, and they're needing someone to fill the pulpit. Like they kind of remember you as that weird blonde college kid, but they're interested in you coming just to fill the pulpit for a little bit. And so basically I showed up, and the church had decreased by about 90% from when I was a college student. But what I saw was still that core group of people that loved each other and loved the Lord and wanted to just kind of rest in that community. And so anyway, I preached for a week, and then they said, hey, you want to come back next week? And then I came back the next week, and then about a month later, they said, do you want to be our interim? And then about 6 months later, do you want to be our bivocational guy? And then I worked myself into being a full-time guy, and then I worked myself back into being a bivocational guy on purpose. And so anyway, I ended up at Prince. It'll be 12 years in May. That I've been there. It's the only church I've ever pastored, and quite frankly, probably the only one I want to.
There you go.
But the thing about Prince that drew me as a college student, the thing about Prince that still continues to draw me, is they understand that we need mentors, we need discipleship, we need people to come alongside us in moments of life. And one of the things that's been beautiful at Prince that I've seen is that's not just like a one-generational thing. We had a lady in our church over COVID lost her husband. And then I got to see, half a dozen widows come alongside her and kind of show her the ropes and minister to her and help her transition to that. We see, I've got some ladies who have been nurses for 30 years. Well, we produce a lot of nurses here at HLG. And so, they come to our church. Well, guess who they're coming alongside and walking at work with them or being a resource for them at the hospital or whatever. That's just what they do. And so I've always appreciated that. I always joke that there's nothing flashy about what we do, but there's something good. And I don't even know what to say other than I'll take it.
Right.
I hear pastors at times talk about frustrations of, I would say that 70% of our people, 70% of the people that attend our church are active in one of the ministries of the church. So our participation is high.
Right.
And so Prince has just been a beautiful thing in that regard. And quite frankly, they hired a 24-year-old rookie who knows nothing and were very patient with me as I kind of learned a little bit of the ropes. So
that is such a huge thing of churches that are willing to, even though, for me specifically too, at being at Emmanuel, I was 18 when they asked me to come and be part of that. And now I'm thinking, that was stupid. Why'd you ask an 18-year-old? And you probably had the same thoughts running through your head. Why are you asking this 24-year-old guy? You know who I am.
Right.
And why do you trust me to come in and do this? And,
right.
they did. And that just shows the love of the church in this community specifically, that they're willing to ask these people specifically from HLG, hey, we trust you. And we think that the Lord is working in your life.
Well, and not just we trust you, but we trust our role in the process to develop you.
Yep.
One of the big things for me at Prince that's been big is we've done a lot of mentorship, a lot of internships that we kind of have made up. But several years ago, this kind of came full circle for me because I have these guys that I'm working with on a regular basis, which quite frankly is probably the most important thing that we do is the mentorship, the discipleship that goes on in our church. But we were at the Southern Baptist Convention in St. Louis years ago. And one of the guys that was being nominated for one of the offices, I don't even care, but one of the offices
right.
was the pastor at Prince when I was there. And so as a student. And this guy nominated him, but more specifically, he talked about how Prince Avenue invested in me in a way that helped me to become the minister that I am. And if they hadn't stepped in the gap and filled that role for me, that guy also was in the Army, so he was deployed, and the church became family to his wife while he was gone. And, he just was talking about how the church was that. And I was sitting there listening to him talk, thinking, I'm the pastor of that church. And I was sitting there thinking, my story is exactly the same. Yeah. And this guy's story is the same, and this guy's story is the same. And so, kind of honestly, what we've tried to do is just kick the can down the road and continue that legacy of a story.
Right.
As we're doing what we're doing. But yeah, it's a weird thing. Yeah. I get asked a lot, how's your church, how are they doing? What's happening? Are you growing? All those kinds of things. And I never really know how to answer that because Sunday mornings look the same as they have for the last probably 8 years. Mm-hmm. But if you look at the people that would be able to say, like that guy said, that Prince Avenue helped develop me and establish, help me cut my teeth in ministry and understand what's going on. There's 60 people I can come up with in 5 minutes that the church has developed and sent and are all over the world or at various churches. And so I say we're doing good.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? I'll take it.
And it's very obvious right now too, because several of my buddies are very involved at Prince and are guys who are going into ministry as well, and you have helped disciple them to this point where they want to continue actually doing this ministry,
right.
And have been able to be heavily involved at Prince and doing things there, which has just influenced their lives, and I know have influenced many other people's lives.
Well, and I think that's the picture of it. At the end of the day, too, that maximizes what our church is able to accomplish because there's more people who know what they're doing. Yep. You know what I mean?
Yep.
that kind of lightens my load a little bit too. COVID kind of changed everything for us because, my wife's a school teacher. I teach at 2 colleges, and I've got kids in the elementary and middle school. So, I got germs
all over
from everywhere. And so we just kind of had to be nimble enough to say, look, if I get quarantined for however long the quarantine is, someone else has got to step up. And so we really, whether it's Charles, our associate pastor, or whether it's, all of the other people in our church that we've developed, that's just become it's almost a next man up mentality, one of my professors used to always call it the Mack truck principle. Like if I get hit by a truck, I don't want the ministry of Prince to stop or really even change that much. Mm-hmm. They find someone else who can fill the pulpit and continue discipling people and move on, and it's good and it's fine. Yeah. So that's kind of been our our vision.
Right, absolutely. Yeah.
Let's keep training.
It's been a full circle thing all in all. And that's the theme that I've sensed in all of this. It's all been full circle for you to end up back at Prince Avenue from being there before in college and still being there now and still being able to be the pastor there. But specifically within Sunday services and whatnot, because we've got a ton of churches here in Hannibal. Sure. We've had Pastor Lee Wood on the podcast already, kind of talked about what a manual Sunday morning looks like. Sure. Could you tell us a little bit what Prince's Sunday morning looks like?
Yeah, so Prince Avenue is, we have our Sunday school hour, which I always think Sunday school is funny because for whatever reason, so I'm 30, how old am I, 36? Okay, so my generation was Sunday school's stupid. Let's do small groups. And then what we realized was they're the same thing. They're just in a different location or a different time, but they're virtually the same thing. Yep. So one of the things that we've done at Prince for Sunday school is, especially when we have adults, so college students and up, we used to have everything kind of subjugated into different age brackets. Your old people are here, your young people are here, And what we realized was, and this was actually an angle that was led by our old generation at Prince, is we don't ever interact with these younger people, and that's not okay. Yeah. So what we've done is we basically, we kind of canvass our people and say, what are some questions you have? What are ways that we can come up with a Sunday school class you want to go to? And then what we do is we split all of our adults up based on whichever class they want to pick. And then we do that for a quarter or, whatever, several months. And then we kind of run it back and pick a different one, or we run them again and they go in, other classes. Mm-hmm. But the point is for example, if we're going to do a class that has to do with what does a godly marriage look like, I want newlyweds and people who've been married for 50 years in the same class. Because the amount of wisdom and growth that can go back and forth is that's what it's supposed to look like, right. We did a marriage class like that several years ago. When all of a sudden I see my newlyweds and old people going on double dates, I was like, this is exactly what we're trying to accomplish. This is beautiful. So we have our Sunday school hour before our church. It's at 9:30. There is a breakfast. We give people food. So that's, you're not Baptist if you don't do that.
Right. Potlucks.
And then honestly, our church service is what you would expect at a Southern Baptist church. I will say that because of our multi-generations, we kind of give everybody something they like, and we also make everyone a little uncomfortable, if that makes any sense. So when it comes to our music, we have some hymns, and then we have some new songs, and they kind of are all blended together. But one of the things that I love is every Sunday morning looking out and seeing my young people trying to figure out how to worship to a piano and an organ, but then also seeing my old people worship to a full band. Yeah. That balance is very important to us at Prince. And one of the things that I love too about even our praise band, if you look at our praise band, we'll have a teenager on the cajon, and then we'll have a guy that's retired playing the guitar. Right. And so we have all of our generations represented even in that. And so it's just a big, weird group that makes sense at Prince. Yep. And then, so we do that, and then we preach, and then we pray, and then we're done. Yeah. But I will say we might be done, but then everyone will mingle for 45 minutes to an hour after the service, just kind of enjoying each other's company. But we're very committed to expository preaching at Prince. One of the biggest things that was ingrained into me, and I just have become more and more convinced that it's important, is if I'm going to give an account to Jesus for giving the whole counsel, I can't think of a better way to do it than giving the whole counsel. Yeah. And so one of the benefits of that is, as a pastor, is it keeps me from picking what I want to talk about. If it's in there, I got to say it. Yeah. And so working through it in that capacity has been important for us. So that's kind of what you get. Like my goal every Sunday morning is to say, this is what God's word says. Here's what it says to you. Now you got to do something about it. And so Sundays generally look like that.
As it should be, right? Yep. As it should be. That's awesome, man. And I also know that, and we talked about in this, that the church is pretty involved with the school. But wanted to talk a little bit about kind of like the mission trips that you guys do. I know you recently sponsored one with the school, but can you kind of go into detail about the mission trips the church has sponsored? Sure.
So we have so many layers that are connected to HLG and not connected to HLG that sometimes it gets fuzzy for us. Our big thing is we have always been concerned with missions as a church. We're not huge, but it's always been a big part of our goal, whether it's local or abroad. Like even our church budget is 35% of our budget goes straight to missions, and that doesn't even include our own church ministries. And so like, we care about it. We really do. And so, whether that's supporting several different missionaries independently or whether it's through the CP, like we care about those things a lot. One of the things the Lord's been really kind of convicting me about is being present in the missionaries we support's lives. And so it started with a college student that came to Prince before I did as pastor, came to Prince and said, you know what? I don't see anyone like me here at this church. They need young people. I'm going to show up. And that guy tried to play a guitar to an organ every week just to try to be there and be a part of it. And that church loved him and embraced him. Anyway, I became the pastor, and so we did a lot of life together. And then he ended up becoming our youth pastor for a while. And then he went and became a missionary in Guadalajara, Mexico for a long time, and then ended up in La Paz. And so we sent several trips kind of to take care of our missionary, maybe more than minister to the Mexican people. The concept is the number one reason that missionaries come off the field is burnout. Yeah. And so what's the best way to cure burnout? Like send people that'll encourage you, And so we started doing that. That became an early affirmation that this is what we should be doing. That first trip to Guadalajara was me and two ladies in their 70s who loved this couple. And, all of a sudden I was like, I'm going to Guadalajara to minister to the Huffs. Do you want to, who wants to come with me? And my secretary and one of her friends came, and we trudged all over Mexico together. And they don't speak any Spanish. I don't speak Spanish really. And so it was an adventure.
No kidding.
But and honestly, it sounds crazy because we're Baptists, but we played like cards with the missionaries, and they were like, this is the greatest thing ever. We haven't played rummy in years, so something silly, but they were refreshed. Right. And so we had done what we set out to do. So anyway, fast forward, we've sent people to Uganda. That one was a connection with an IMB missionary who was my brother. So we sent some people down to Uganda to minister to that. And really what that was is we said to our college students, hey, really to our church, but our college students were really the ones that had the availability. Hey, we're going to send a group who feels like the Lord's calling them to go. And then when those people are saying, yes, we're called to go, then we say, great. Let's figure out how to get you there, and some of that's fundraising, some of that's, just generous support of our people. But really it's a matter of we have kind of just our attitude is if the Lord's calling, he'll figure out how to make it work. And so, we sent some people to Uganda. In January, the church sent me to go check on, we sent about 7 of our people to plant a church in New York, in Saugerties, New York, where Jimmy Fallon's from, apparently.
Really? Huh.
I didn't know that until
All right.
I got there.
Got to reach out to him, right?
Yes, it's but it's the Northeast,
Yeah.
and it's upstate New York, so it's a different culture anyway. Like, everyone stares at me like I'm grumpy, like I'm,
Right.
because I'm an outsider. I obviously don't look like, anyway.
Right.
So they were up there. So the church was like, hey, you should probably go check on these people and see how their church plant's going. And I've been reaching out, like, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I've been reaching out to them, but they're like, no, you need to go. And so the church said, go. And so I hopped on a plane in January and spent 4 days in Saugerties, New York, trying
Yeah.
to connect with this church plant. And then we come back, and some of our college students were connected a little bit with the Harlias, who are also HLG people, in Bucharest, Romania. And our church, so you're talking about full circle. So Michelle Harlia and I went to church together at Prince when we were in college. And I remember the church sent her on I think it was 6 months or 3 months or something trip to Bucharest. She hadn't met her husband yet, and the church was like, sweet, go, we're excited, and supported her and sent her off.
Yeah.
And then they came back and got married in our church. I didn't know any of this. Got married at Prince. And then when they went back as a couple, the church was, we'll help. We'll be a part of it. And so some of our college students, Sydney and Ashlyn, were like, hey, we really kind of feel like we should go to Bucharest. And I was like, cool.
Let's do it.
Like, let's do it. And the other thing that Prince does, and I don't know if this is me or if I learned it from Prince and just continue to do it, but I think the plan was for me to plan the trip or for the church to plan the trip. But the Prince Avenue Way is awesome. If you feel the Lord doing that, plan it and tell me how I can help you.
Yep.
And so when they're trying to figure out the logistics of this trip, I was like, I'll be honest, I'm no help to you. Like, my planning for mission trips is I buy a plane ticket and make it up when I get there. So this is not the trip to play that card.
Right.
So anyway, they just killed it. Like, they knocked it out of the park. They got all the logistics, our airfare, and everything went so smooth. But really, what was it? It was a chance for us to go and encourage our missionaries, do some work with some Ukrainian refugees, and just kind of help in the gospel in Romania. But the bigger piece was to come alongside our people and say, we love you and you're not alone. And, something as stupid as this is pretty common. One of the people on our group, they were talking about in Romania, they have all these like backyard Bible clubs and stuff they do, or think VBS kind of a deal.
Right.
And so they'll have all of these gypsy kids that like are kind of outcasts in their society, but they'll come to these backyard Bible clubs because they get popcorn.
Yeah.
And they get to play on a bounce house, and they get to, someone loves them, and they get Kool-Aid and all the things that we as Americans just don't think about.
Right.
And so they were talking about a popcorn, like our popcorn machine just can't keep up. And so one of the people on our team was like, here's my credit card, like, go buy one, go buy a bigger one. And so they bought this popcorn machine. And the whole, like, that's just, like, that is the personality of Prince and how Prince kind of views missions. Like, there's a need, we can meet it, let's go. Yeah. Like, it's an investment in the kingdom. And so that's kind of been how we've done it. I wish I could tell you, like, there's a real good organizational thing that people can scale and model, but there's not. Like, for us, it's kind of when the Lord starts to move, we say, great, let's do it, and move on from there. So
right. That's, we've talked about it over and over again, but how you guys are working with college students and everything is just really amazing, and sending people out, and have continued to do that over time, which kind of brings us into our next question that we have. So why do you think that campus ministry is important?
Sure. So here's the deal. Not every college experience, these are formative years for you. Like, I didn't realize how formative they were until like 10 years after I graduated from college. And so they're formative years in so many ways. And the other thing is, you have so many different types of people that you interact with on campus all the time. Whether you're an athlete or just living in the dorms, you got all sorts of stuff. So like that life on life concept is easy to see in college. And so I think campus ministry is so important because man, if you can teach a college student how important ministry, doing life with people for the sake of the kingdom, for the sake of growth, man, that makes all the difference in the world. Mm-hmm. How many different ways do you want me to explain my connection to this place? So after I graduate, so I got married in college. Apparently that's an HLG thing
right,
sometimes
big HLG
too.
thing.
Right. Or right after, as in your case. Okay. But at the end of the day, so my wife got married to me and then moved into Crouch Hall. I was a residence hall director. Uh-huh. And then they built the Fletchers. So then I joked like my kingdom expanded to Nuncook
right.
in Crouch. But we did that for 5 years together. Yeah. Just lived on campus. And Doug Logston, who goes to church with us at Prince too, like he was the other male RD, and we just poured into our RAs so that they could pour into their students. And the whole concept was simple. The best way to do ministry is to live with people, to live life with people. And it doesn't matter if you're a Bible major or if you're a business major, or comm arts major. It doesn't matter what you do. The Lord still is calling you to be a disciple maker.
Yep.
Like that's the goal. And so I think college ministry is huge because it reinforces those ideas.
Yeah.
Whether it's the Bible studies or the gathering, or whether it's just, a Bible study on your team, it doesn't even matter what it is. It's just reinforcing that this is good.
Yeah.
This is what I need, because eventually you graduate
Yep.
and you leave, and chances are you go to a situation that's not like HLG, and what you're going to realize so fast is the reason that I thrived was because of that. And so you're going to look for opportunities to connect to that, or probably to have to recreate some of that.
Yeah.
And creating community is tough.
Yeah.
But learning how to do that's what campus ministry does, is
right.
It helps learn how to create community. So I think that's why it's super important. And one of the things I've always appreciated about HLG is it understands that HLG isn't the church. And so there's
Yep.
this kind of line of campus ministry versus church ministry. Ministry is ministry, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But understanding those differences are big. But, man, there's so many opportunities right in front of your face. Mm-hmm. When I lived in Crouch as a student, like, English was a second language, actually, in that building. And so at that time, we had 20% of our residential population was international.
Jeez.
So we had 100 international students.
Right.
And you want to talk about culture shift, like that was Crouch.
Right.
And you just lived in it.
Yeah.
You had Europeans over here and you had these South American students over here. Like at the end of the day, the nations were in Crouch.
Right. Yeah.
And so learning their culture, understanding that, like that was all, I guess, having an eye tuned to see the opportunities is the result of campus ministry.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. So
yeah, love to hear about the your own personal story that you've had from seeing campus ministry from your time here
sure.
at HLGU, but from the stance of Prince Avenue, what are some college ministry events that you guys have?
Sure. I'm trying to think how I want to word this. So we do have something that's geared towards college students on Tuesday nights. Mm-hmm. We have a family in our church that opens up their home, and there's usually some sort of there's a spiritual component to it, but it's a lot of community, life on life, that kind of a thing. If I'm completely honest with you, at Prince, we throw you in with everyone and just say, we're not going to cater to you as a college student. We're going to cater to you as a man or a woman, and we're going to put you in groups where that can be the case. Now, that being said, I think we have discipleship groups every day of the week for men and women, and usually those groups are multi-generational. And so, there is a space, I think, where you have to cater in some sense to college students, but we don't go overboard with that. We're a big mess of a family, and so
come and join it, right?
Yeah, like if you can tolerate that, then it's like my big fat Greek wedding,
right?
all the time,
right? That's what Prince Avenue is all the time.
Except for none of us are Greek, so I don't really understand where that came from. But
well, hey, it's a illustration. You're a pastor,
That's
so
right.
you got to come up with the
That's
illustrations, right?
Except for that movie, you were like 2 when it was made. So
I've never watched those movies, so I need to catch up here.
No, you don't. Yeah. They're not that good.
They're not that good.
Nope.
Sarah Breimer, if she's listening to this, may not agree with you. They're her favorite movies of all time. So she might.
Don't even really remember the premise. I just remember everyone's loud,
right,
and obnoxious.
Well, there you go. And hey, now you know what Prince is like. People are loud. They're gonna love on you, and obnoxious people. That's great, right?
Yeah.
But as far you're saying. Basically, the college ministry is people just being part of the church.
It's ministry. Like, we're gonna put you in places that you can serve, and some of that is like legitimately. We're not a huge church, so there's always needs.
Yeah.
Whether it's helping with our Wednesday night program for kids, or whether it's we have a pretty active pulse on our community.
Mm-hmm.
So like whether it's going to say, hey, this person reached out to us a few months ago, we're going to go follow up with them. Like one of the biggest things that we do is we try not to do ministry alone. We always want someone to be with us. Obviously not like and I don't mean that like just to protect ourselves, but I mean like we want someone to be learning what we're doing while we're doing it.
Yeah.
And so if we're going to go visit this, person who's in the community that asked us to shovel their snow, well, we're going to bring someone with us to say, hey, this is John, and he's, John is not anyone's name, by the way.
Yeah.
Just figured it was a good
just
generic
John.
name, right?
Yeah.
So, but, we're going to go talk to John, and we're going to try to help him, and see if he'll let us pray with him and see if there's any other needs we can meet. But, it's really that relational piece. And so, we have all sorts of things, though. Like there's apparently this like really large group of college students in our church that play volleyball all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And so they're pretty cutthroat about that, I think.
Yes.
So there's a lot of opportunities to get involved. Mm-hmm. It's just we throw you in the deep end.
Right. You're getting thrown right in there. Gonna get involved with people. Gonna have some competitive volleyball games.
I did forget. I think I'd get in trouble if I didn't mention. We do have a thing on the second Sunday of every month. Mm-hmm. We have a bunch of host homes that anybody who comes that's a like. I think the way they word it is if you don't have an AARP card, you can be a part of this. Okay. But then they'll kind of divide you up. We have host homes that will take you out to lunch or bring you to their house for lunch. And it's just like no agenda other than we want you to eat food that's not from the cafeteria. Mm-hmm. And we want to be friends. Amen. And we want to love you in that capacity. So that's become a pretty big thing. I guess the other thing we do is during finals week, we open up our church. The Wi-Fi, as you know, at HLG at times is sporadic.
Yep.
And so we basically just say, come use our building as a study hall. You can use our internet. All of our sweet ladies will cook a bunch of food or cookies and brownies.
Absolutely.
And
come on.
buffalo chicken dip. And
Baptist
then
churches.
People will just come and visit and hang out. And usually there's someone who's distracting everyone by playing a board game. So I don't know how much studying actually happens. It's good.
Right. You can get into fellowship with one another and be around one another is a good thing.
Yeah. Students seem to enjoy that.
Yeah. Well, hey, and finals week is coming up.
That's true. Coming up.
Hey, if you're listening to this,
Prince Avenue,
go to Prince Avenue, get some food, go maybe study.
Sure.
Go talk more probably, but
talk to Javen because I think he's done with school pretty much, so he'll distract everybody.
Gotta love Javen.
I do love Javen.
But we've been talking about how.
Fun fact. Sorry.
Okay, gotta hear this. Fun fact.
Javen was babysat by my wife when he was a baby.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Because
talk about circles.
Yeah, because his parents came here.
Dad was my wife's youth pastor at one point.
Are you serious?
Dead serious.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
Wow. That so many full circles. That's crazy.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Well. Fun fact. All right, Javen, you
got a shout out, bud.
You got a shout out. We got to let him know he has a shout out now. He has to listen to the podcast. But just from all the full circles, we have just been able to see how amazing the local church can be for college students. So, we talked about the benefits of it, but what are some other benefits of students being involved in a local church?
Sure. I think in one capacity, one of the biggest things that college students will struggle with think about the way ministry in churches is for high school people.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything is catered to you. We're going to give you, you know what I mean? Like everything is about you.
Yeah.
Well, then what happens when you're not in high school anymore?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you might go to, you know, and I guess the beauty of the local church is college isn't like youth group 2.0.
Mm-hmm.
This is what church is. Like
Yeah.
this is the beauty of the body. This is, you know, that beautiful picture of, you know, even a glimpse of the picture of what we'll see at the end of time when we're all together, every tribe and tongue.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the picture.
Yeah.
And so what's the benefit? Like the benefit is belonging. The benefit is community. The benefit is leveraging other people's life experience. I've got 2 older brothers, and they are wise and they are smart, but I've also been able to like watch them when they were growing up and not repeat some of the mistakes that they had. Like, so I could either learn from them or not.
Right.
Church provides that for you, you know? Like I'll never forget, we had this time when I was a college student, and I don't remember what, I said something off color, just being stupid. And I had a man in my life at church that loved me and respected me and wanted to see me be the best version of me I could be.
Mm-hmm.
And he pulled me aside and he was like, hey man, I get what you're saying. And that was funny, but it was not remotely okay.
Yeah.
Like all that did was distracted from what matters. Yeah. And, you know, like if you're not connected to a church, no one feels like they can say that to you or try to really, you know, cultivate something in you that needs to be there. And so, you know, it's such an important piece. But I'd say the biggest draw for a college student to join a church is the biggest draw for anybody to join the church. You know, like you belong to a body that is united, that gets to serve Jesus together. Like the benefits of that are, you know, like you have a family.
Yeah.
And who doesn't want that?
Right.
You know, like I need a lot of people to keep me straight.
Yep.
You know, I think about my secretary at the church, or, you know, today's Secretary's Day, and
Shout out.
shout out, yeah, in case you didn't know.
Right.
I felt bad though because there was flowers on her desk, and I knew that the church bought her flowers, but I usually give her something too. But I thought it was next week, so I'm kind of in the doghouse.
Now you have to.
So there's my confession.
Right.
But I told her, she knows that I screwed up, but
You'll make it even better now.
I
right?
will.
Yeah.
I've got a whole nother week to plan it out. But her big thing, but like she legitimately, because she cares about me, takes like make sure that I know what I'm supposed to be doing or where I'm supposed to be, or even something as little as, okay, so like when you get out of college, right? Like you still need people who will support you. When I got to Prince, I was fresh out of college, right? I had just finished seminary, sort of. I stayed in school for a lot longer, but, you know, I was just kind of finished seminary, and Shirley would look at me in the office and be like, Joe, you haven't taken Julie on a date in a while, so drop the kids off Friday night at the house and go take your wife on a date. You know, like, those are the things that are important,
right,
that you need, you know? And if you're not connected to a church, no one knows that you have those needs, and no one can meet them. So, man, I can't stress enough, like the local church enhanced my college experience, but I also think that it worked both ways.
Yep.
Like I think my time at HLG as a student, as an employee, even now as a local pastor who is whatever I am here, connected through various students and such, like those lines are very, very important.
Yeah.
Because if you learn how to really walk them now, boy, it's a whole lot easier when you get out.
Yep.
So
from all that you said, I say word, because it's been the same exact thing for me as well. There has not been a negative side to going and being a part of a local church. It has enhanced me as a student, not only with my walk with Christ, just like in general, like has just helped me, period, in everything in life. You have a second family right there, who is always willing to help you out in every circumstance, and you don't know what it's like until you actually try it. So I guess the encouragement we would both say to people who are listening: get involved, get in, and go. Like, you will never find out what the local church is like until you go to the local church.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yep. And man, sift through the weeds. Like whatever you see, look at the people.
Yep.
Like, get to know the people.
Yep.
That's where you're going to find the value.
Yep.
Because that's what matters.
Right.
Is people.
Yeah.
So that's
Absolutely. Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to add to the podcast today? Anything else you want to say?
good. No, I can't think of anything.
Can't think of anything else. Man.
Pushed longer than I meant to.
Hey man, you're good. I mean, we've got some really great stuff here, and I know that our listeners will appreciate it a lot. I want to thank you for being willing to come on today and,
Sure.
and talk about the local church. It's a blessing that you're in this community still, and still being able to be here and be involved with the school.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you.
That's all the time we have today. Thank you again, Pastor Joe, for taking the time to be here with us and talking about campus ministry. This has been Ministry Matters. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.